The stagecoach had already vanished into the dust when Maribel noticed the wedding dresses. 4 of them, hanging on the fence like ghosts. White fabric yellowed by sun and rain, swaying in the mountain wind. She was the 5th bride, the last one on the agency's list, the one they called leftover stock. The cabin stood crooked against the Colorado sky, its porch sagging, its windows dark as dead eyes. A small grave sat behind the house, fresh wildflowers planted on top. Someone still visited, but it was the porch steps that made her breath catch. Dried blood, dark brown streaks across the weathered wood. A shadow moved inside the doorway. Heavy boots. Then he stepped into the light. Isaac Turner. A scar ran from his temple to his jaw, thick and ragged, the kind a man gives himself. He didn't speak. He just stared at her hands. They were shaking. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Maribel didn't run. The other brides had run. She could see it in those dresses' torn hems, missing buttons, fabric ripped in panic, but her feet stayed planted in the dirt, even as Isaac Turner walked toward her. He stopped 3 paces away, close enough that she could see the scar tissue was still pink in places, fresh enough to be recent, maybe 2 years, maybe less. He didn't explain the blood. Instead, he pointed toward the back of the property, past the sagging chicken coop. Then he made a slashing motion across his throat. Fox. Last night. The blood belonged to the animal, not a person. Maribel understood. This was mountain law. No apologies. No explanations beyond what was necessary. Isaac gestured toward the cabin door, then toward the empty road where dust still hung in the air. 2 choices, inside or gone. The stagecoach wouldn't return for 3 weeks. She looked around instead of answering. The porch roof had holes she could see sky through. The chicken coop leaned 15 degrees east, held up by prayer and rotting timber. And the well had a smell. Maribel walked past Isaac without asking permission. She felt his eyes on her back, confused, maybe angry. She didn't care. She'd learned long ago that hesitation was more dangerous than action. The well rope was frayed but held. She pulled up the bucket, water sloshing over the sides, and brought it to her nose. Bitter, faint, but unmistakable, like copper in something else. Something that didn't belong in mountain spring water. She dumped it, pulled up another bucket. Same smell. Thunder rolled in the distance. She looked west and saw clouds piling up over the peaks, dark and swollen. 2 hours, maybe 3, before the storm hit. When she turned around, Isaac was standing right behind her. She told him about the water, the bitter taste, the contamination, but he didn't respond to her words. He just stared at her face, his expression cracking open for the first time, something between horror and hunger. His hands trembled at his sides. Maribel stepped back. What? Isaac's voice came out rusted, like a door that hadn't opened in years. Say that again. The water is, not the words. His eyes were wet now. Your voice. You sound exactly like her. Isaac didn't explain what he meant. He just turned and walked toward the cabin, leaving Maribel standing by the contaminated well with thunder growing louder behind her. She followed. There was nowhere else to go. The cabin's interior matched its exterior bare, neglected, stripped of anything soft. A cast-iron stove sat cold in the corner, a rope bed with a thin mattress, a table with 1 chair. Everything built for one person who expected to stay alone. But there was a corner covered by a faded quilt, hanging from the ceiling like a curtain. Maribel could see shapes behind it. Small shapes. She didn't ask. Some doors weren't meant to be opened by strangers. Isaac knelt by the stove, his movements efficient despite the tremor in his hands. He fed kindling into the belly of the iron beast, struck a match, blew gently until flames caught. The orange light carved shadows into his scarred face. Above the stove, a photograph. A woman with dark hair and kind eyes. A little girl, maybe 4 years old, clutching a rag doll. And Isaac younger, unscarred, almost smiling. A different man entirely. Maribel looked away before he caught her staring. The kitchen was thick with dust and neglect. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling beams. A thin layer of grime coated every surface. But there was flour in a tin, dried beans in a jar, enough to make something. She didn't ask permission. She started cleaning. Isaac watched from across the room as she scrubbed the counter, found a knife, began preparing a simple meal. When she reached for the blade, her sleeve rode up. Scars. Thin white lines running along her inner forearm. Not from accident. Too deliberate. Too parallel. The kind of marks a person makes when the pain inside becomes unbearable, and the only relief is making it visible. She pulled her sleeve down. Isaac said nothing, but something shifted in his posture. Recognition. Perhaps the acknowledgement of one wounded creature seeing another. The cornbread came out dense but edible. The beans were bland but warm. She set 2 plates on the table, then realized there was only one chair. Isaac brought a wooden crate from the corner. They sat across from each other, eating in silence. He ate fast, hunched over his plate, shoveling food like someone might steal it, like he'd learned that meals could be taken away. Maribel ate slow, each bite deliberate, chewed thoroughly, savored, like someone who'd learned that food was never guaranteed, like someone who'd been hungry for a very long time. The storm broke while they ate. Rain hammered the roof, finding every hole, dripping into buckets Isaac had already positioned. He knew where every leak was. He'd lived with them instead of fixing them. Lightning flashed. In the brief white light, Maribel saw movement outside the window. A dog, mangy, thin, ribs showing through matted brown fur. It pressed itself against the porch railing, shivering in the downpour. She stood. The dog... No. The word came out sharp, final. Isaac's jaw tightened, and he wouldn't look toward the window. It's freezing out there. No dogs in this house. His voice cracked on the last word. Not that one. Not ever. Maribel didn't push, but she watched him refuse to look outside, refused to acknowledge the creature that whimpered and scratched at the door. There was a story there, a painful one. She studied the dresses through the rain-streaked window instead. 4 ghosts on a fence line. The first dress was pristine. The bride had fled before even entering the cabin. The second was torn at the hem. 3 days of trying before panic won. The third had burn marks along the sleeve. Maribel wondered what had happened, how close the fire had come. The fourth was different, neatly folded over the fence rail. No tears, no damage, just left behind, like a quiet surrender. That woman had stayed a week, then walked away without a word. Maribel wondered which kind of leaving was worse, the violent escape or the silent acceptance of defeat. The storm raged for hours. Isaac retreated to a corner with a kerosene lamp and a book he didn't read. Maribel lay on the rope bed he'd given up for her, staring at the ceiling, listening to rain and wind and the occasional whimper of the dog outside. She woke to silence. The storm had passed. Moonlight filtered through the gaps in the walls, and Isaac's corner was empty. Maribel rose, wrapping the thin blanket around her shoulders, and looked through the window. He stood in the muddy yard behind the cabin, in front of the small grave she'd noticed earlier. No coat, no hat, just standing in the wet darkness, head bowed, shoulders shaking. The wild flowers on the grave were drowning in rainwater. 2 wooden crosses. Not one. Who else was buried there? Morning light revealed the damage. Maribel woke to the sound of hammering. She pushed herself up from the rope bed, muscles aching from a night on thin mattress and old springs, and looked thus through the window. Isaac was on the roof. He balanced on the sagging porch beams, hammer in hand, replacing rotted shingles with fresh-cut wood. Sawdust floated down like snow. His movements were deliberate, focused the work of a man who'd remembered he wanted to live somewhere instead of just exist. She watched him for a long moment. Yesterday, those holes had been invisible to him. Today, he was fixing them. Something had shifted in the night. Maribel found the coffee tin in the kitchen, boiled water on the stove, and poured the dark liquid into a battered tin cup. She carried it outside without speaking and set it on the porch railing where he could reach it. Isaac climbed down, took the cup, drank. His eyes met hers over the rim. Neither spoke. But something passed between them anyway, acknowledgement. Perhaps the first real communication they'd shared. He went back to work. So did she. The days that followed fell into rhythm. Maribel attacked the chicken coop with borrowed tools, straightening walls, reinforcing beams, patching holes where foxes could slip through. Her hands blistered, then calloused. She didn't complain. Isaac cleaned the well. He hauled up bucket after bucket of contaminated water, dumped it far from the house, scrubbed the stones with lye soap. By the third day, the water ran clear and sweet. They communicated through action, a handed tool, a nod of approval, the occasional grunt that meant move left or hold steady. Words felt unnecessary, maybe even dangerous. On the fourth evening, Isaac ate dinner at the table, not hunched in the corner, not standing by the stove. He sat in the chair, the only chair, while Maribel took the wooden crate. It was a small thing, but Maribel understood its weight. He was making room for her in his space. The stray dog crept closer each day. Maribel left scraps near the porch steps when Isaac wasn't looking. The animal, brown and matted, with intelligent eyes, learned to wait for her. It never barked, never begged, just watched with patient hunger. She named it Rye in her mind, the color of its fur in sunlight. A week passed. The porch no longer leaked. The chicken coop stood straight. And one evening, Isaac brought her something. A quilt, hand-stitched, old. The fabric soft from decades of use. Faded flowers on cream-colored cotton. She could see where it had been mended, again and again, with careful, loving hands. "My mother made this," Isaac said. His voice was still rough from disuse, but the words came easier now. "Only thing I kept. From before." Maribel understood what he wasn't saying. This wasn't just a blanket. It was truss stitched into cotton and thread. It was the first thing he'd given anyone in years. She took it carefully, felt its weight, pressed it to her chest. "Thank you." They sat on the porch that night as crickets sang in the summer darkness. The air smelled of pine and rain-washed earth. Maribel wrapped herself in the quilt while Isaac occupied the other end of the bench, leaving careful space between them. "Eleanor," he said suddenly. "My wife." She loved this time of evening. Said the crickets were singing her to sleep. Maribel didn't push, didn't ask questions. She just listened. "Lily was our daughter. 4 years old when—" His voice broke. He swallowed hard. "The fever took them both. Same week. I couldn't save them." The confession hung in the air. 7 years of silence. Broken. "I was a doctor," he added. "In Denver. Couldn't save my own family." Maribel reached across the space between them. Not to touch him, not yet, but to rest her hand on the bench. Close enough that he could take it if he wanted. He didn't. But he didn't move away either. The next morning, a rider came. Maribel recognized the horse first, the same one that had pulled the stagecoach. The rider was young, maybe 19, with a leather satchel across his chest. "Letter for Turner?" he called out. "From the matrimonial agency?" Isaac took the envelope without expression. Inside official papers, a marriage certificate. "Congratulations on your union." Something that might have been a smile flickered across his face. He showed the paper to Maribel, and for one bright moment, hope felt solid enough to touch. But that night, while Isaac slept, Maribel discovered something else. The quilt had a hidden pocket. Her fingers found it by accident, tracing the stitching, feeling for loose threads. Inside was a folded paper, yellowed with age. A letter, dated 7 years ago. The handwriting was feminine, elegant, written by a steady hand. Maribel read it by candlelight. Her face went pale, then white. Her hands began to shake so badly the paper rattled. The letter contained instructions, confessions, and a final request that changed everything she understood about Isaac Turner. She was still holding the letter when she heard the hoofbeats. Not one horse this time, several, coming fast from the direction of town. Through the window, she saw torchlight bouncing in the darkness, men on horseback, and leading them. A figure she recognized even in silhouette, a figure from her nightmares. The letter fell from her trembling fingers. The riders arrived at dawn. 3 men on horseback, their suits too fine for mountain country, their boots too polished for honest work. The leader dismounted first, a tall man with silver hair and cold blue eyes that calculated everything they touched. Isaac stepped onto the porch with his rifle. Maribel stayed in the doorway, the letter still burning in her pocket. "Mr. Turner." The silver-haired man smiled like a snake. "My name is Cornelius Wade. I represent the Union Pacific Railroad. We have a business proposition. Not interested. You haven't heard the offer." Wade reached into his coat and produced a document. "We're prepared to pay $10,000 for your property. That's 10 times its assessed value." Isaac didn't lower the rifle. "I said not interested." Wade's smile didn't waver. "Perhaps you don't understand your situation. This land sits above a mineral deposit. Gold. Mr. Turner. Not enough to make you rich, but enough to make our railroad very interested in the route through these mountains." Maribel watched Isaac's face. He hadn't known. The shock flickered across his features before he buried it. "Still not selling." Wade sighed, as though disappointed by a child's stubbornness. "We've made this offer before, you know, to other settlers in this region. Most accepted. Those who didn't." He gestured vaguely toward the mountains. "Well, the frontier is dangerous. Accidents happen. Is that a threat?" "Merely an observation." Wade's eyes drifted to the wedding dresses on the fence. "I see you've had trouble keeping a wife. Mr. Turner? 4 brides. 4 failures. Did you ever wonder why the first one left so quickly?" Isaac's grip tightened on the rifle. "Her name was Adelaide." Wade continued, "Lovely girl. We paid her $200 to put arsenic in your well. She was supposed to make it look natural. Mountain man dies of fever. Land goes to auction. We buy it cheap." He shook his head with mock sadness. "But she developed a conscience. Couldn't go through with it. Ran off instead. The contaminated water. The bitter taste. Not an accident. Not nature. Attempted murder. You poisoned my well." Isaac's voice was flat, deadly. "We freshened it up recently. Yes, hoping to encourage your departure." Wade shrugged. "But you're resilient. I'll give you that." Maribel's heart hammered against her ribs. She should run. She should hide. But her feet wouldn't move, because Wade had turned his attention to her. His blue eyes narrowed. Recognition flickered across his face like lightning. "Well, His smile turned predatory. "Mrs. Garrett, I almost didn't recognize you. You've changed. Isaac glanced at Maribel. You know this man. Oh, she knows me very well. Wade stepped closer to the porch. She used to work for my law firm in Denver. Excellent secretary. Meticulous with documents. Too meticulous, as it turned out. Maribel's voice came out steady, though her hands shook. I found your records. The forged deeds. The fraudulent claims. You've stolen land from dozens of families. And you stole those documents from my office. Wade's tone hardened. Did you think I wouldn't find you? Did you think marrying some mountain hermit would protect you? Isaac lowered the rifle slightly. Maribel, what is he talking about? Tell him. Wade was enjoying this now. Tell him about Silas. The name hit Maribel like a physical blow. Her face drained of color. Silas Garrett, Wade continued, savoring each word. Your husband, my business partner, the man who's been searching for you for 6 months. Isaac turned to face her fully. You're married. I was. The words scraped her throat raw. I thought he was dead. He's very much alive, and very eager to reclaim his property. Wade's smile twisted. That's what you are, Mrs. Garrett. Property. Silas paid good money for you, and he doesn't appreciate when his belongings run away. He kept me locked in a cellar for 3 years. Maribel's voice cracked. He starved me, beat me, kept me prisoner so I couldn't testify about what I'd seen. Isaac's expression shifted, not softening, but recalculating, reassessing everything he thought he knew. She's been lying to you since she arrived, Wade said smoothly, using you as a hiding place. Did she mention she's carrying evidence that could destroy my business? Documents hidden somewhere? Waiting to be delivered to federal authorities? Isaac looked at Maribel. Is it true? All of it? She couldn't deny it. I didn't tell you because you were using me. His voice went cold. The rifle lowered completely now, pointed at the ground. Just like everyone else. No. Isaac, I have a proposition. Wade stepped between them. Give me the woman. Let Silas have what belongs to him. In exchange, I'll forget about the land. Forget about the gold. Forget I ever heard the name Isaac Turner. Silence stretched across the yard. The other 2 men had their hands on their pistols. Rye growled low in his throat from beneath the porch. Isaac's jaw worked. His eyes were unreadable. Get off my property. Wade's smile finally died. You have 5 days to reconsider. After that, Silas arrives with 12 men, and he's not interested in negotiation. He mounted his horse and looked down at Maribel. You should have stayed in that cellar, Mrs. Garrett. It would have been kinder than what's coming. The riders disappeared into the dust. Isaac didn't look at Maribel. He walked past her into the cabin, set down the rifle, and stood with his back to her. Isaac, please, I trusted you. The words were quiet, more painful than shouting. I told you about Eleanor, about Lily. I gave you my mother's quilt, and you've been lying to me since the moment you stepped off that coach. I was afraid you should have been honest. He grabbed a blanket from the corner and walked out onto the porch. The door didn't slam. It just closed. Quietly. Finally. Maribel stood alone in the cabin, surrounded by the evidence of the life they'd been building. The coffee cups. The second chair he'd finally brought to the table. The flowers she'd put in a jar on the windowsill. All of it meaningless now. She didn't sleep that night. Neither did Isaac. She heard him pacing on the porch, heard Rye whimpering at the distance between them. At midnight, she made a decision. She couldn't stay. Not when staying meant bringing destruction to the only person who'd shown her kindness in years. She packed her few belongings in the dark, moving silently, placing the quilt back on the bed where it belonged. She was reaching for the door when it opened. Isaac stood there, holding his revolver. Not aimed at her, held out. Grip first. If you're leaving, he said, take this. She stared at the weapon, at the man offering her protection even while refusing to look her in the eye. I don't want you dead, he added. I just don't know if I can trust you. Maribel took the gun. Their fingers brushed. Neither pulled away. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered. Isaac finally met her gaze. The pain there was 7 years deep, and she'd just added fresh wounds. That's what Eleanor said, right before she died. The words hung between them like a blade. Then Maribel heard it. Hoofbeats, coming fast. Not from town this time. From the opposite direction. A single rider, pushing hard. Isaac grabbed his rifle and stepped onto the porch. The rider emerged from the tree line, a woman, blonde hair flying, dress torn. She nearly fell from the saddle in her haste to dismount. Maribel recognized her face from somewhere. The fourth dress on the fence. The one who'd left quietly. Clara! Isaac's voice was sharp with confusion. The woman grabbed his arm, gasping for breath. He's here! She choked out. Silas. He didn't wait 5 days. He's burning the town. Anyone who won't tell him where she is. Clara's eyes found Maribel in the doorway. He'll be here by morning, and he's not coming to take you back. She swallowed hard. He's coming to kill you. Clara collapsed on the porch, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Isaac brought her water while Maribel stood frozen in the doorway, the revolver still warm in her hand. How many men? Isaac asked. 8, maybe 10. Clara's hands shook as she drank. He burned the general store when old Mr. Hensley wouldn't talk. The church is next if Pastor Williams doesn't give up her location by sunrise. Maribel felt the ground tilt beneath her feet. People were suffering because of her. Innocent people. A town burning because she dared to run. I have to go. The words left her mouth before she could stop them. If I turn myself in, he'll kill you anyway. Clara grabbed her wrist. I heard him talking to his men. He doesn't want you back. Maribel, he wants you silenced. Permanently. Isaac stood apart from them both, arms crossed, face unreadable. The distance between them felt like miles. Why did you come back? He asked Clara. You left. You were safe. Clara's eyes dropped to the porch boards. Wade threatened my family, said he'd hurt my mother if I didn't leave you. But when I heard what Silas was doing... She looked up at Maribel. No one deserves what he did to you. No one. Maribel's throat tightened. This woman, a stranger, really had risked everything to warn her, while Isaac couldn't even look at her. You should both leave, Isaac said flatly. Take the horse. Ride for the federal marshal in Cripple Creek. I'll stay and slow them down. They'll kill you. Maribel stepped toward him. Isaac. Maybe that's what I deserve. His voice cracked on the last word. I couldn't save anyone. Not Eleanor. Not Lily. Not even myself. The words hung in the air like smoke. Clara looked between them, sensing something deeper than she understood. I'll check on the horse, she murmured, and slipped away into the darkness. Maribel and Isaac stood alone on the porch, the night pressing in around them. I didn't use you. Maribel's voice was barely a whisper. I know that's what you think, but it's not true. When I stepped off that coach, I wasn't looking for a hiding place. I was looking for somewhere to die. Isaac's head snapped up. I'd given up. She rolled up her sleeves, exposing her arms to the moonlight. Not just the scars on her wrists, but dozens more, crisscrossing her forearms, her biceps, disappearing beneath the fabric. 3 years in that cellar. No light, no human voice except his. When he came to remind me I was worthless, I clawed my own skin just to feel something besides despair. Isaac stared at the map of her suffering. His jaw worked, but no words came. I escaped with a spoon. A broken laugh escaped her lips. 6 months of scraping concrete, hiding the dust in my mattress, praying he wouldn't notice. When I finally crawled out, my hands were so bloody I couldn't feel them for a week. She held up her palms. In the dim light, he could see the scarring there too, rough patches where skin had been torn away and healed wrong. I gained the weight in that cellar. He fed me scraps, but too much of them. Said he wanted me fat so no other man would ever want me. Said I should be grateful anyone kept me at all. Her voice hardened. I believed him. For 3 years, I believed every word. Isaac sank onto the porch bench. His hands hung between his knees, trembling. The agency listed me as leftover stock. Maribel continued. Last woman on the list. Too old. Too heavy. Too damaged. When I saw your name, a man so frightening that 4 brides had fled, I thought maybe we were the same. 2 people nobody else wanted. Silence stretched between them. Then Isaac spoke. I was a doctor. The words came slowly, painfully, like stones being pulled from a wound. In Denver, I had a practice, patients who trusted me, a wife who loved me, a daughter who called me Papa and laughed when I carried her on my shoulders. Maribel lowered herself onto the bench beside him, not touching, just present. The scarlet fever came in the summer of 1880. I worked 18-hour days trying to save people. I thought I could beat it. I thought... His voice broke. I thought my family was safe because I was a doctor, because I knew things, because I would never let anything happen to them. He pressed his palms against his eyes. Eleanor got sick first. Then Lily. I tried everything, every treatment I knew, every remedy I'd ever read about. Nothing worked. I watched them both die in the same bed, holding hands, while I stood there useless. Tears slid down Maribel's cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. After the funeral, I took my surgical knife. Isaac traced the scar on his face. I wanted to die. I deserved to die. But I couldn't even do that right. I cut too shallow, passed out from the blood loss. A neighbor found me. He dropped his hand. I came here to disappear, built this cabin, stopped being a doctor, stopped being anything, just waited to die alone like I deserved. Maribel reached into her pocket and withdrew the letter she'd found in the quilt. She handed it to him. I read it, she admitted. I'm sorry, but I think you need to read it again. Isaac's hands shook as he unfolded the yellowed paper. Eleanor's handwriting, preserved for 7 years. His lips moved as he read. Then his shoulders began to shake. She wrote this before she died, he whispered. She knew she wasn't going to make it. And she... A sob tore from his chest. She asked me to live, to love again. She said that was the only way she could rest. He wept then. Great. Heaving sobs that seemed to come from somewhere bottomless. 7 years of grief, finally breaking through. Maribel didn't embrace him, didn't offer empty comfort. She simply sat beside him in the darkness, letting him feel his pain without trying to fix it. The stray dog crept onto the porch. It looked at Isaac, then at Maribel, then settled between them with a soft whine. Isaac's hand found the dog's head, his fingers buried in the matted fur. I can't lose anyone else. His voice was raw, destroyed. I'm not strong enough. Maribel finally spoke the words she'd been holding all night, then stopped trying to be strong alone. They sat together until the sky began to lighten. 2 broken people, 1 scarred dog, and somewhere in the distance, smoke rising from a burning town. Clara appeared at dawn, her face pale. Riders coming, at least 6. They'll be here within the hour. Isaac stood. His eyes were red, his face tear-streaked, but something had changed in his posture. He wasn't waiting to die anymore. Then we have 1 hour to get ready. Isaac moved with purpose Maribel hadn't seen before. He disappeared into the cabin and emerged carrying a leather bag, its surface cracked with age and neglect. When he set it on the porch and opened it, Maribel saw medical instruments gleaming in the early light. Scalpels, forceps, suturing needles, the tools of a healer, untouched for 7 years. "You're going back to being a doctor?" Clara asked. "I never stopped being one." Isaac's voice was steady now. "I just stopped believing I had the right—" He cleaned each instrument methodically, muscle memory guiding his hands. Maribel watched the transformation not just in the tools, but in the man. His shoulders straightened, his eyes sharpened. The broken hermit was becoming someone else, someone who had decided to live. "We need a plan," Maribel said. "6 men, maybe more. We can't fight them directly." "We're not going to fight them." Isaac looked up. "We're going to outsmart them." Clara stepped forward. "There's a deputy federal marshal in Silver Creek. 2 days' ride. I passed through there on my way here." "Too far." Isaac shook his head. "They'll be here in an hour." "Then someone needs to leave now." Maribel reached into her dress and pulled out a leather pouch she'd kept hidden against her body. The documents Wade mentioned, forged deeds, fraudulent land claims, enough evidence to put him and Silas in prison for decades. Isaac stared at the pouch. "You've had that the whole time. I couldn't risk losing it. This is why Silas kept me alive. He knew I'd hidden the originals somewhere, but I never told him where." She pressed the pouch into Clara's hands. "Take the horse. Ride to Silver Creek. Find the marshal." Clara's face paled. "What about you? We'll hold them off. Buy you time." "That's suicide." "No." Isaac stood, closing his medical bag. "That's strategy. Silas wants Maribel alive long enough to find out where these documents are. He won't kill her immediately. He'll try to make her talk first. That gives us leverage." Maribel understood. "You want to stall them. Long enough for Clara to reach Silver Creek. Long enough for the law to arrive." Isaac met her eyes. "But I need to know you trust me. After everything, can you trust me?" The question hung in the morning air. Behind them, smoke still rose from the direction of town. Somewhere out there, Silas Garrett was coming to finish what he'd started 3 years ago. Maribel thought about the cellar, the darkness, the endless days of scraping concrete with a spoon because hope was the only thing keeping her alive. "I trust you," she said. Isaac nodded once. Then he reached into his pocket and withdrew something small and golden. A pocket watch, its surface worn smooth by generations of handling. "This belonged to my father, and his father before him." He pressed it into Maribel's palm. "I want you to keep it." She understood the weight of the gesture. He was giving her a piece of his history, a reason to come back. "I'll return it," she promised. "I know you will." Clara mounted the horse, the leather pouch secure inside her dress. "How long can you hold them?" "As long as it takes." Isaac handed her his rifle. "You might need this more than me. What will you use?" He glanced at Maribel's revolver. "We'll manage?" Clara hesitated, clearly wanting to argue. Then she kicked the horse into motion and disappeared into the trees, heading west towards Silver Creek. Maribel and Isaac watched until she vanished from sight. "Now what?" Maribel asked. "Now we prepare." They worked quickly, transforming the cabin into something defensible. Isaac showed her where to position furniture as barricades, where the walls were thickest, which windows offered the best sight lines. "You've thought about this before," Maribel observed. "Every night for 5 years." His jaw tightened. "I always imagined I'd be defending this place alone, dying alone. And now—" He paused, hammer in hand. "Now I have something worth defending." The words settled into Maribel's chest like warm stones. They boarded up the back windows, leaving only the front accessible. Isaac rigged a tripwire across the porch steps, simple but effective. Anyone charging up would stumble. As midday approached, Isaac did something unexpected. He walked to the corner of the cabin, the corner with the quilt curtain, the corner he'd never let Maribel see. Slowly, He pulled the fabric aside. Behind it a child's world, preserved in dust and grief. A small rocking horse, a collection of rag dolls, picture books with worn spines, and on a tiny shelf, a porcelain figurine of an angel. Lily's things, untouched for 7 years. Isaac knelt among the relics of his daughter's life. His hands trembled as he picked up a doll, yellow yarn hair, button eyes, a dress Eleanor had probably sewn. Maribel stayed back, giving him space. "I couldn't just throw them away," he said quietly. "Couldn't even look at them, but I couldn't let them go either." He began arranging the items carefully, not discarding them, organizing them, making space without erasing the memory. "Eleanor wanted more children," he continued. "We were trying. When the fever came, she said Lily needed a brother or sister." His voice caught. "I told her we had time, all the time in the world." Maribel knelt beside him. "What would she want you to do now?" Isaac looked at the angel figurine. "She'd want me to stop hiding from life." He set the doll gently on the shelf. "She'd want me to let someone else in." He stood, pulled the curtain back across the corner, and turned to face Maribel. "Whatever happens today," he said, "I want you to know you gave me something I thought I'd lost forever." "What's that?" "A reason to see tomorrow." Rye barked suddenly, sharp and urgent. Isaac moved to the window. His face hardened. "They're here." Maribel joined him, peering through the gap in the boards. Riders emerged from the tree line. Not 6, not 8, 12 men on horseback, spreading out to surround the cabin. And at their center, mounted on a black stallion, sat Silas Garrett. He looked exactly as Maribel remembered, handsome, polished, with a smile that never reached his eyes, the kind of man who could charm a room while planning murder. Silas raised his hand, and the riders halted. "Maribel." His voice carried across the clearing, smooth as silk. "I know you're in there, darling. We need to talk about our future." She gripped the revolver until her knuckles went white. "He wasn't supposed to arrive until tomorrow," she whispered. Isaac checked the revolver's chamber. 6 bullets, 12 men. "Then we improvise." Silas dismounted, still smiling, and began walking toward the cabin. Behind him, 2 of his men were lighting torches. Silas stopped 10 feet from the porch, his smile never wavering. "You've put on weight, darling." His eyes traveled over Maribel with the cold assessment of a man examining livestock. "I barely recognized you. But then, that was the point, wasn't it? Make you so repulsive that no one else would ever want you." Maribel's grip tightened on the revolver hidden behind the doorframe. Isaac stood in front of her, unarmed, his body a barrier between her and the monster she'd fled. "She's not your property," Isaac said. His voice was calm, steady, the voice of a man who had already made peace with death. Silas laughed. "Actually, she is. I paid good money for that mail-order bride certificate, legal and binding." He pulled a folded document from his coat. "I have the papers right here. Maribel Garrett, née Holbrook, is my lawful wife, and I've come to collect what belongs to me." The marriage was built on fraud. Maribel stepped forward, standing beside Isaac. "You imprisoned me, starved me, beat me. No court in the country would uphold that contract." "Courts?" Silas waved dismissively. "We're not in court, darling. We're in the mountains. And out here, possession is the only law that matters." He signaled to his men. 2 of them raised their torches. "Here's what's going to happen." Silas continued. "You're going to tell me where you hid the original documents, the ones you stole from Wade's office. Then you're going to come with me quietly, and this pathetic hermit gets to live. And if I refuse," Silas's smile turned cruel, "then we burn everything. The cabin, the chicken coop, The grave behind the house with your precious wife and daughter. He looked at Isaac. Oh yes, I know all about your sad little story. The doctor who couldn't save his own family. Pathetic. Isaac didn't flinch, but Maribel saw his hands curl into fists at his sides. The documents are gone, she said. I sent them to the federal marshal this morning. Your friend Wade will be in prison by the end of the week. For the first time, Silas's composure cracked. His jaw tightened. His eyes went flat and cold. You're lying. Am I? Maribel tilted her chin up. You taught me well. Silas? 3 years in that cellar gave me plenty of time to plan. Did you really think I'd keep my only leverage somewhere you could find it? Silas stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed a harsh, bitter sound. It doesn't matter. He drew a knife from his belt, the blade catching the sunlight. Wade promised me $5,000 to silence you permanently. Whether the documents exist or not, you're worth more to me dead than alive. He gestured to his men. Burn it. All of it. The torches arced through the air. One landed on the chicken coop. The dry wood caught instantly, flames racing up the walls. The hens inside began screaming a sound Maribel would never forget. Isaac moved without thinking. He vaulted the porch railing and sprinted toward the burning structure, crashing through the door as smoke billowed out. Maribel screamed his name, but he was already inside, already pulling chickens from their roosts and hurling them through the window. Silas watched with amusement. Touching. He cares more about poultry than his own life. The roof groaned. A beam collapsed. Showering sparks. Isaac staggered out, his arms full of squawking hens, his shirt smoldering. He dropped the birds and went back in. Isaac. Stop. He emerged again, this time with burns climbing his forearms. The skin was already blistering, red and raw. But he'd saved the flock every last bird. The coop collapsed behind him in a fountain of flame. Isaac fell to his knees, cradling his injured hands. His breath came in ragged gasps. Silas stepped forward, knife raised. How noble. Now hold still while I finish this. Maribel raised the revolver. Don't move. Silas paused, eyebrows lifting. You won't shoot me, darling. You don't have the stomach for it. Remember how you used to cry when I raised my voice. Remember how you'd beg me to stop. Her hands trembled. The memories surged up darkness. Hunger. The endless scraping of metal on concrete. The way his footsteps sounded on the cellar stairs. The sound of the lock clicking shut. That woman died in your cellar. Maribel's voice didn't shake. I'm someone else now. She pulled the trigger. The bullet caught Silas in the shoulder. He spun, dropping the knife, clutching the wound with disbelief painted across his face. You shot me! Blood seeped between his fingers. You actually shot me? His men surged forward, but Maribel swung the revolver toward them. 5 bullets left. Which one of you wants to be next? They hesitated, looked at each other, looked at their wounded boss bleeding in the dirt. She's bluffing, Silas snarled. She can't shoot all of you. Hoofbeats, thundering from the west. Everyone turned. A column of riders burst from the tree line, 8 men in federal uniforms, led by a figure in a marshal's star. And riding beside him, her blonde hair streaming behind her, was Clara, United States Marshal. The lead rider bellowed, Everyone drop your weapons. Now, Silas's men scattered like startled quail. Some ran for their horses. Others threw down their guns and raised their hands. Within moments, the yard was chaos marshals chasing fugitives, shouted orders, the crack of warning shots. Silas tried to run. Maribel stepped into his path. They stood face to face, the prisoner and her jailer, the monster and the woman he'd tried to destroy. 3 years, Maribel said quietly. 3 years in the dark. Do you have any idea what that does to a person? Blood dripped from Silas's shoulder. His charm had evaporated, leaving only the ugly truth beneath. You were nothing when I found you. a penniless secretary with no family. I gave you a life. You gave me a cage." He lunged for her. She didn't shoot. Instead, she stepped aside, letting his own momentum carry him forward. He stumbled, fell, and before he could rise, 2 marshals were on him, forcing his arms behind his back. "Silas Garrett." The lead marshal's voice was iron. "You're under arrest for kidnapping, false imprisonment, arson, and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent, though I doubt you will." They dragged him away. He screamed threats, promises of revenge, but Maribel didn't hear any of it. She was already running toward Isaac. He lay where he'd fallen, hands cradled against his chest. The burns were severe 2nd degree at least, maybe worse. His face was gray with pain. "Hold still." Maribel knelt beside him, tearing strips from her petticoat. "I need to bandage these before infection sets in." "You came back." His voice was hoarse from smoke. "You were supposed to run." "I sent Clara instead." She worked quickly, wrapping the makeshift bandages around his ruined hands. "Someone had to stay and make sure you didn't do anything stupid." "I saved the chickens." "That was stupid." He laughed a broken, painful sound that turned into a cough. "Those chickens are our livelihood. Without them, we'd still have each other." Her hand stilled on his bandages. "You could have died, Isaac. You ran into a burning building for a flock of birds. They were your birds too." The words hit her harder than she expected. Your birds too, as if they were already partners, already family. She finished the bandages in silence. When she looked up, Isaac was watching her face. "Your hands," he said quietly. She looked down at her own fingers, scarred, calloused, nails permanently damaged from 6 months of scraping concrete. "They dug through a wall to save yourself." Isaac reached out, wincing at the movement, and covered her hands with his bandaged ones. "Now they saved me." The chicken coop was ash. The cabin had scorch marks climbing its walls. The yard was trampled and bloody. But they were alive. Clara rode up, dismounting in a rush. "The marshal says Wade was arrested in town an hour ago. Your documents were enough to charge him with fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder." Maribel nodded, unable to speak. It was over. 3 years of running, hiding, surviving, finally over. Isaac struggled to his feet, Maribel supporting his weight. Together, they surveyed the damage. The chicken coop was gone. Their income, their security, their plans for the future reduced to smoldering timber and scattered feathers. But something caught Maribel's eye. In the ashes, half buried under a fallen beam, a single egg lay unbroken. She picked it up, feeling its warmth against her palm. Life, somehow preserved in the midst of destruction. "We'll rebuild," Isaac said, watching her hold the egg. Maribel looked at the ruins, then at the man beside her, then at the egg in her hands. "Yes," she said, "we will." But when she looked up, she saw Clara's face had gone pale. "What is it?" Clara pointed toward the tree line. A rider sat motionless at the edge of the forest. Not a marshal, not one of Silas's men. Even from this distance, Maribel recognized the silver hair. Cornelius Wade. He tipped his hat once, a mocking salute, then turned his horse and vanished into the shadows. 3 months later, the chicken coop stood taller than the original. Maribel paused in the doorway of the cabin, watching Isaac hammer the final shingle into place. His hands had healed scarred now, the skin tight and shiny in places, but functional. He'd regained full use of his fingers within 6 weeks, though the doctor in Silver Creek had warned him he might not. Isaac had just smiled at that. "I know a thing or two about healing," he'd said. The new coop was larger, sturdier, built to withstand storms and predators alike. Above the door, Isaac had carved 2 names into the wood, Isaac and Maribel. Not Turner, not Garrett, just their first names, intertwined like the lives they were building together. He climbed down from the ladder, wiping sweat from his forehead, and caught her watching. "It's finished," he said. "It's beautiful." And it was. Not just the coop, everything. The cabin's roof no longer leaked. The porch stood straight and solid, reinforced with new timber. The well produced water so clear and sweet that neighbors rode miles to fill their canteens. The word neighbors still felt strange. 3 months ago, Isaac Turner had been a hermit, a ghost story parents told to frighten children. Now he was Doc Turner, the mountain physician who'd set Widow Patterson's broken arm and delivered the Hendricks twins in the same week. Maribel had watched the transformation with quiet wonder. The man who'd hidden from life was now walking back into it, one patient at a time. She wasn't the same either. The weight she'd gained in captivity had begun to shift, not disappearing, but redistributing. Her body was changing, adapting to a life of physical work and regular meals eaten in daylight. She no longer flinched at sudden sounds. She no longer checked the door locks 3 times before sleeping. Some nights, she still dreamed of the cellar, but now, when she woke, gasping, Isaac was there. Not touching her, he always asked first but present. Solid. Real. Clara visited every Sunday. She'd moved to Silver Creek after the trial, taking a position as a seamstress. But she rode out to the cabin each week, bringing news from town and fabrics she thought Maribel might like. Today, she arrived with something special. I finished it. Clara held up her creation, a set of curtains made from 4 wedding dresses, the white fabric cut and sewn into panels, trimmed with lace, salvaged from the hems. "I thought you might want something pretty for the windows." Maribel ran her fingers over the delicate stitching. 4 brides who'd fled. 4 dresses left behind, now transformed into something new. "It's perfect." They hung the curtains together while Isaac prepared lunch. The cabin felt different with sunlight filtering through white lace, softer, warmer, more like a home than a hiding place. "Any word about Wade?" Maribel asked quietly. Clara's expression tightened. The marshals tracked him to the border, but he slipped through. They think he's in Mexico now. Maribel nodded. She'd expected as much. Men like Cornelius Wade had money, connections, escape routes planned years in advance. He'd lost his empire, the fraudulent land deals exposed, his partners imprisoned, his railroad scheme collapsed, but he'd kept his freedom. "He won't come back," Clara said firmly. "There's nothing left for him here." Maribel wasn't so sure. She'd seen his face in the trees that day, the cold calculation in his eyes. Men like Wade didn't forget. They waited. But that was a fear for another day. After Clara left, Isaac took Maribel's hand. "I want to show you something." He led her to the back of the property, to the 2 wooden crosses she'd glimpsed that first night. The graves were well tended now, weeds cleared, fresh flowers planted, the crosses repainted white. "Eleanor," Isaac said, gesturing to the larger grave, "and Lily." Maribel had seen the graves before, but always from a distance. Isaac had never invited her closer. Until now. "Eleanor. Lily." Isaac's voice caught. He cleared his throat and tried again. "This is Maribel. She's the reason I'm still here." Maribel felt tears prick her eyes. She knelt beside the smaller grave, placing her hand on the cool earth. "Hello, Lily," she whispered. "Your papa talks about you every day. He tells me you loved butterflies and hated peas and always wanted one more bedtime story." Isaac made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "And Eleanor." Maribel moved to the other grave. "Thank you. For the letter? For telling him to live again. I promise I'll take care of him." They stayed there until the sun began to set. 2 people making peace with the ghosts that had haunted them. That evening, Isaac wrote a letter of his own. Maribel watched him at the table, pen moving slowly across paper. his scarred hands steady and sure. When he finished, he folded the letter carefully and walked outside alone. She watched through the window as he placed it on Eleanor's grave, weighing it down with a stone. She never asked what it said. Some things belonged only to the dead. The seasons turned. Summer faded into autumn, the mountain aspens blazing gold and orange before dropping their leaves. Maribel and Isaac fell into Rhythm's morning coffee on the porch, afternoons of work and healing, evenings by the fire with Rye curled at their feet. The dog had transformed too. Regular meals and gentle hands had turned the mangy stray into a sleek, loyal companion. He followed Isaac on house calls and slept across Maribel's feet at night, growling softly at any sound outside. One morning in late October, Maribel woke feeling strange. Not sick exactly, just different. A heaviness in her body, a tenderness in places she hadn't noticed before. She counted backward in her mind, counted again, sat very still in the early light, her hands moving unconsciously to her stomach. That evening, she found Isaac on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. "I need to tell you something." He turned, saw her face, and went pale. "What's wrong? Are you hurt? Is it—" "Nothing's wrong." She took his hands, those scarred, healing hands that had pulled chickens from flames and set broken bones, and learned to touch her without fear. "Something's right, actually. Very right." She placed his palm against her belly. Isaac stared at his hand, at her face, back at his hand. "You mean—" "Yes." For a long moment, he didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe. Then Isaac Turner, the mountain man who'd frightened off 4 brides, the hermit who'd tried to die alone, the broken doctor who thought he'd never heal, fell to his knees and wept. But these weren't tears of grief. Maribel knelt beside him, wrapping her arms around his shaking shoulders. Rye whined and pushed between them, confused by the strange sounds his humans were making. "I thought—" Isaac gasped between sobs. "I thought that part of my life was over. I thought I'd never—" "I know." She held him tighter. "I thought the same thing." They stayed there until the stars came out, until the mountain cold drove them inside, until the fire burned low and the kerosene lamp cast dancing shadows on the walls. That night, they sat in 2 rocking chairs on the porch chairs Isaac had built himself, side by side, close enough to touch. Steam rose from tin cups of coffee. The smell of fresh-baked pie drifted from the kitchen. Somewhere in the darkness, a cricket sang. Maribel reached over and took Isaac's hand. He squeezed back, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I was the 5th bride," she said softly. "The one nobody wanted." "You were the only one who stayed. You were worth staying for." Isaac lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her scarred knuckles. "Home isn't a place," he said. "I finally understand that." "What is it then?" He looked at her, this woman who'd clawed through walls, who'd faced her demons, who'd chosen him when the whole world said he was too broken to love. "Home is where they stop asking you to leave." Maribel leaned her head against his shoulder and watched the stars wheel slowly overhead. Inside her, a new life grew, a child who would never know cellars or loneliness, or the weight of unworthiness. A child who would only know love. The 4 wedding dresses had become curtains. The contaminated well now ran clear. The grave behind the house had fresh flowers every Sunday. And the mountain man who'd scared everyone away had finally found someone brave enough to stay. Some people will tell you that broken things should be thrown away. They said Isaac was too damaged to love. They said Maribel was leftover stock, worth nothing to anyone. They said 2 shattered people could never build something whole. They were wrong. If you have ever been the last one chosen, the one nobody wanted, the one left behind when everyone else found their place, this story was for you. If you have ever loved someone the world called unlovable, or been loved when you believed yourself unworthy of it. This story was for you. If you have ever rebuilt your life from ashes, scraped through walls with nothing but a spoon and stubborn hope, or found home in the last place you expected, this story was for you. We want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments, have you ever found belonging where you least expected it? Have you ever been someone's fifth chance, or given someone theirs? Share this story with someone who needs to hear that broken does not mean beyond repair, that leftover does not mean worthless, that the right person will not ask you to leave, because home is not where you are born. Home is where they finally let you stay.